If you're like me and you've already played Monster Hunter Stories 2, is it worth going back to the remake of Monster Hunter Stories? Well, I got addicted to the first one, and the second one I kind of left in the past, so let's talk about it. Welcome back, Classy Crew, to a review of a Monster Hunter spin-off, Monster Hunter Stories 1, which I got a free copy from Capcom to try over on Steam as part of the celebration of Monster Hunter Stories 2's 3rd year anniversary. This was a game that was not really on my radar. Other than the fact it was a Monster Hunter game, I'm like, okay, like it looks interesting, but from what I had heard of Monster Hunter Stories was that Monster Hunter Stories 2 did everything the first game did, but better. And I had already played Monster Hunter Stories 2 and gotten a lot of what I wanted out of it. I finished the story, I made it to the optional endgame boss, promptly died to it, and never picked up the game ever again. So I was like, do I really want to go back and play essentially a 3DS remake? Well, with Capcom offering it, it was pretty much an easy, yeah, okay, let's try it. And I was so surprised at how much I got hooked on this game. I will say right now, Monster Hunter Stories 2 adds mechanics, does everything better. You get a better story, you get better graphics, you get literally more monster varieties. Everything is better about it. The combat is better. But the simplicity of Monster Hunter Stories 1 is so tightly, well put together. The game loop is just, it knows what it wants to do and it doesn't try to do anything else. And because of that, it does that one thing so good. I'm hooked and I've completed the story. I'm in my end game grind now. And I just really enjoy winding down with this game. And I kind of want to 100% it because it's a game that feels very much achievable. It's not like I'm trying to unlock every single gene in the game like Monster Hunter Stories 2 expects you to do if you want 100%. So let's break it down, what I liked about this and why, if you're like me, you should definitely pick this game up. First of all, the story is a lot simpler in the sense, I'm not going to compare much of the two. Basically, you are a rider from a rider village and you want to go and explore the world because the dark blight is infecting certain monsters. This is like a story we're seeing in many Monster Hunter games now. So as a rider, you're part of a secluded village that usually they don't go into the world, but now your mission is to go figure out what's going on with the black blight because it's impacting monsters, and your best buddy lost a very important person. I guess that's a spoiler too, though it's revealed in the first 30 minutes of the game. And so off you go on a journey with your newfound friend Naviru, who's just, actually he's kind of less annoying in this one. Maybe it's because I got accustomed to him in the second one, but he basically acts as your navigator and your voice because you're a silent protagonist. And so off you go and you're just exploring the world, encountering new friends along the way, and then you eventually meet a villain, which again, I'm not going to spoil anything, and that all leads to a pretty simplistic story, which feels very similar to the second one, just in a simpler form. So the story is not really the real reason that I kept going. The real reason I kept going is the checklist, and it might sound stupid, but I'm absolutely so motivated. One thing I'm surprised they did not bring into Monster Hunter Stories 2 is the Poogie list. So one checklist that you're going to want to check off if you're good at checklists is there are 100 Poogies in the game hidden across the world. So as you're adventuring, you're going to find a Poogie that's stuck. You got to pet it, and then you get a Poogie on your bingo card, knocking one off out of 100. And every 10 Poogie that you find gives you a cosmetic reward or some items. The rewards honestly suck. It's the adventure that is its own reward of finding all the Poogies. I have found over 50 Poogies. And this is not something you want to do like an endgame back-to-back of oh, I ignored all of them. Let's find 100 Poogies now, because that's just a pain. It's something you want to do organically as you play the game. Another thing that you also find in Monster Hunter Stories 2 is you get a Monsterpedia and a Monstipedia, so you get to keep track of all the monsters you've encountered in the world that you can hunt, and then you get a little indicator if you've hunted it or not. That I absolutely love tracking, oh, who did I not hunt yet? At the time of recording this video, I have 9 monsters I have not hunted. They're all elder dragons, so it's just a matter of grinding. And then there's the Monsties, which there's less of, but there's also a check mark for those of trying to get all of them. So all of that really satisfying. There's also a quest board, much like the first one, where there's a bunch of quests that you want to knock off. And it's pretty much the loop of the game is you go into a new area, a new biome That's where the story wants you to do. You get introduced to new monsters, you hunt those new monsters, you unlock a bunch of quests, and you can do the quests of that zone before you fight the boss of the zone, which increases the level of your kinship stone, and then you can continue progressing to the next biome with new quests, harder stuff, and rinse and repeat. So if you want, you could just gun it right through the story, get all of that. What I've been doing is actually going biome by biome, moving the story forward, then clearing all the subquests, and then moving to the next area, which has permitted me to actually be pretty well leveled for every zone. Usually I just gun it. I don't do all these subquests. I found the whole gene thing, so basically mixing your genes between monsters, to be simpler in this game, which made it more easy for me to understand. You also have to understand that when I played Monster Hunter Stories 2, I had only played World and Rise, and I was 6 months into my Monster Hunter journey. I had little context for this franchise, and a lot of monsters I discovered through Monster Hunter Stories 2 because I hadn't played any of the old world game. So a lot of them were introduced to me here. Now going into Monster Hunter Stories 1, now that I've been 3-4 years in this franchise, I knew all the monsters, and it was more like, oh, they're here. Oh, they look so cute when they're like rendered this way. And it was more of almost like a fan servicey game for me. So in that sense, very different mindset approaching the game. There were some nice familiar characters here like Roberto and Avinio, which I had known from Monster Hunter Stories 2. They're younger here, they're less developed, and I do think that they're just more interesting in the second one. Oh, Cheval as well is here, and you actually get a little bit more character development since he's kind of a major plot point, whereas in the second one, it kind of alludes to what happened in here. So it's kind of nice to get all of the story beats that Stories 2 was alluding to finally understand what's going on. Some things that I was surprised going from second to the first game that I didn't realize wasn't in the first game, and it limits the combat a lot. You have a lot less weapon options, so you pretty much can only get a greatsword, a hammer, a sword and shield, and a hunting horn. Those are the only 4 weapon types you can have, and you can't swap them in combat, so they don't have any kind of in the second one you had that element of strategy of, oh, I need to use a ranged weapon here, I need to use a blunt weapon, I need to use a sharp weapon. That whole strategic mechanic, not in the first one, making it a simpler game. Another thing is you don't get any buddies in your hunts. It's always you and your monstie. It's not you, your monstie, a friend, and their monstie, which again makes the gameplay a lot simpler, which for the sake of, you know, my addiction to this, just made it more fun. There's less elements to complicate things, which makes for a shallow fighting experience. But honestly, for what I wanted, this was perfect. Now where I'm at is in the post-game after the credits, and there's a lot of grind. This is not really spoiler territory. There's a lot to do after you finish the story. You get access to basically all the monsters. There's now a high rank version of them, very much like Monster Hunter Stories 2. And there's a labyrinth that you can use to grind. You can find higher rank materials, higher rank monsters, and it's all randomly generated. So you just kind of want to go through that and accumulate experience points. And then eventually the final test, I think, is the tower, which I don't know how many floors there are, but every floor has a monster, and you have to beat each one to get to the next one. And that's how you unlock the final challenges of the game, which are Elder Dragons, and we can all take a pretty good guess at who the final monsters are. So that is what I'm working on, and it's such a good thing to just like put on 3-speed the combat, and it's kind of something I can just mindlessly just grind, and it is really rewarding. You know, you walk around, you grab things as you like walk past a mineral pit or like a bug thing, and just collect things. Then you fight a monster, you knock them out in a few hits, and it's just nice. Like, it's not too simple, but it's simple enough that you can just kind of shut off your mind and just go through the motions. So all of this said, I think this is a really good thing that they brought back. I was looking at the sales of Monster Hunter Stories 2, and the last numbers that were shared a couple years ago was like 2 million units. In comparison, Monster Hunter Stories 1 on the 3DS in Japan sold 350,000. They never released numbers from outside Japan from what I could find. So massive difference, and I can see why they re-released this game. And yeah, if you really love Stories 2, I really think you would enjoy Stories 1. If you just like Stories 2 like I did, Stories 1 was surprisingly addictive. It just has the right charm. So don't expect much going into this game, but it is something great if you're a Monster Hunter fan, or if you have some time to kill, or you're looking for another game to just kind of wind down with. I think this is a really good one to pick up. It's available on just about every platform. There is a multiplayer aspect if you want to fight other players like PvP style. I don't touch that stuff because I suck. But otherwise, the game has a lot to offer. I think it's about 20 to 30 hours if you just go for the story. And if you're looking to grind out everything and get 100%, you're looking at doubling that playtime from what I can see on how long to beat. So that's my recommendation. I really recommend it, not just to play it, to beat it. If you're a completionist, it also is quite achievable from what I can tell. And so that's what I'll be focusing on for my next Heiji Completes. So I'll see you on the next video or the next stream. And until next time, keep it classy.